Emma Carter had spent 3 sleepless nights waiting for her father to come home. His phone went straight to voicemail. His office was locked. His car had been found abandoned near the train station with the keys still inside. The police called it a voluntary disappearance, but Emma knew her father would never leave without warning. Not after everything they had survived together. Since her mother's death, Robert Carter had been more than her father. He had been her only family, her protector, and the reason she worked 2 jobs without complaint. Their small construction company had once supported dozens of workers, but the business had struggled for years. Contracts disappeared. Banks refused new loans. Equipment broke faster than they could replace it. Robert always promised he would fix everything. Now he was gone, and strangers had started calling. The first message arrived on Monday morning. Your father owes money. The second came that evening. Pay before Friday. The third included a photograph of Emma leaving her apartment. That was when fear became real. On Thursday afternoon, a black luxury sedan stopped outside the small Carter construction office. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. They did not knock before entering. Emma stood behind the reception desk, gripping her phone beneath the counter. The taller man looked around the nearly empty office. Emma Carter? Who's asking? Mr. Russo wants to see you. Her heartbeat quickened. Everyone in the city knew the Russo name. Adrian Russo owned shipping companies, hotels, private security firms, and half the warehouses along the waterfront. Newspapers called him a brilliant billionaire. People who knew more called him something else. A mafia boss. Emma swallowed. I'm not going anywhere. The man placed a black business card on the desk. You can come willingly, or Mr. Russo can come here. The threat was delivered politely. That made it worse. 20 minutes later, Emma sat in the back seat of the sedan while the city disappeared behind tinted windows. The car finally stopped outside a massive estate hidden behind iron gates. Armed guards stood near the entrance. Security cameras followed every movement. The mansion looked less like a home and more like a fortress built from marble and glass. Emma was led through a silent hallway into a private office. Adrian Russo stood beside a floor-to-ceiling window with the city skyline behind him. He was younger than she expected. Late 30s, perhaps.
Tall.
Dark hair. Trimmed beard. Sharp eyes that seemed to measure every weakness before a person spoke. He wore a perfectly fitted black suit, but his jacket was open, revealing tattoos along one hand and wrist. He turned slowly. Miss Carter. Emma remained near the door. Where is my father? Adrian gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. Sit. I asked you a question. His expression did not change. And I told you to sit. The guards behind her shifted slightly. Emma refused to show fear. She walked toward the desk, but remained standing. Adrian studied her for several seconds. Then, he placed a thick black folder between them. I bought your father's debt. Emma stared at the folder. What debt? $3,400,000. Her breath caught. That's impossible. Adrian opened the file. Loan agreements. Property documents. Signed guarantees. Her father's signature appeared on every page. Emma flipped through them with trembling hands.
No.
He never told me. People rarely advertise desperation. She looked up angrily. Why would you buy it? Adrian leaned back in his chair. Because the previous lender intended to collect it violently. And you're different? A faint smile appeared. Sometimes. Emma pushed the folder away. We don't have that kind of money. I know. The company is nearly bankrupt. I know that too. Then what do you want? Adrian's gaze remained fixed on her. You. The office became silent. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. He continued before she could speak. Your father left behind something valuable. Until I find it, you will remain under my protection. Protection? She laughed bitterly. You had men drag me into your car. No one dragged you. They threatened me. My men explained your options. That is not the same thing. Adrian's smile disappeared. You are being watched, Miss Carter. Her anger faltered. He slid several photographs across the desk. Emma leaving her apartment. Emma entering the office. Emma visiting the police station. The same photographs she had received anonymously. She slowly looked up. You sent these.
No.
Then who did? That is what I'm trying to discover. Adrian stood and walked around the desk. Emma instinctively stepped back. He stopped several feet away. Your father borrowed money from men connected to my family. 3 days ago, he vanished. The same night, someone broke into one of my warehouses and stole a ledger containing names, payments, and government contacts. I don't know anything about a ledger. I believe you. Then let me leave.
No.
Her eyes narrowed. You can't keep me here. I can keep you alive. The words were calm, but something in his face told her he was not exaggerating. Emma looked toward the guards. You expect me to live in this mansion? For now. And if I refuse? Adrian moved closer, lowering his voice. Then the men watching your apartment will reach you before my people do. Emma searched his expression for deception. She found arrogance,
Control. Danger.
but beneath all of it, she also saw something unexpected. Concern. Very little of it, but enough to confuse her. What does my father have to do with your stolen ledger? Adrian glanced toward the black folder. That is the question your father disappeared before answering. Emma's throat tightened. You think he stole it? I think someone wants me to believe he did. Why? Because your father was investigating financial transfers through his construction company. Emma froze. He told me the company was only struggling. He lied. Adrian walked back toward the desk and picked up a photograph. It showed Robert standing outside a warehouse with a man Emma recognized immediately. Her father's business partner, Daniel Voss. Only Daniel had claimed he had not seen Robert in weeks. Emma stared at the date printed beneath the image. It had been taken 2 nights before her father disappeared. Daniel lied to me. Yes. She looked up. Where is he? Missing. The room suddenly felt colder. Adrian closed the folder. You and I now have the same problem. My father is missing. My ledger is missing. And someone connected to both wants you silenced. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. What happens now? You stay here. For how long? Until I find your father. And the debt. Adrian looked directly into her eyes. The debt is only paper. She frowned. You brought me here because of something else. Yes. What? Before Adrian could answer, the office door opened. Marco, his head of security, entered carrying a phone. Boss. Adrian took one look at his expression. What happened? Marco placed the phone on the desk. A live security feed showed Emma's apartment building. Smoke poured from the second-floor windows. Firefighters surrounded the entrance. Emma moved toward the screen in horror. That's my home. Marco nodded grimly. The fire started 10 minutes after we picked her up. Emma's knees nearly gave way. Adrian caught her arm before she fell. For the first time, his grip was not controlling. It was steady, protective. Someone had not merely been watching her. They had expected her to be inside. Adrian looked at Marco. Lock down the estate. Then his eyes returned to Emma. The smug confidence had vanished. His voice became deadly serious. Now you understand. Emma stared at the burning building on the screen. Adrian tightened his hand around hers. The debt never made you mine. He looked toward the armed guards gathering outside the office. The people trying to kill you did. Emma stood frozen as flames swallowed the apartment building she had called home for the last 8 years. Firefighters rushed through the smoke while frightened residents stood behind police barricades. Her belongings, family photographs, and every memory of her parents were disappearing before her eyes. Tears filled her eyes. They were trying to kill me. She whispered the words more to herself than to Adrian. Adrian slowly released her arm and looked toward Marco. Increase security. I want double patrols around the estate. Marco nodded immediately. Already done. Emma looked at Adrian. You knew this would happen.
No.
I knew someone was watching you, but not this. She wiped away her tears. I don't understand. My father owned a small construction company. He wasn't rich. He wasn't important. So, why would anyone burn my apartment down? Adrian walked toward the large map hanging inside his office. Several photographs and documents were pinned across it. He pointed toward one picture. Your father renovated 3 abandoned warehouses last year. Emma nodded. Yes. They belonged to one of my shipping companies. Her eyes widened. Dad never told me. He probably didn't know. He accepted the contract through a subcontractor. Adrian removed another photograph. The problem is, one of those warehouses became the meeting place for someone stealing money from my organization. Emma frowned. You think my father discovered something? I think he discovered too much. Silence filled the room. Emma slowly sat down. Everything she believed about her father's disappearance suddenly felt different. Maybe he hadn't run away. Maybe someone had taken him. That evening, Emma was shown to a luxurious guest suite inside the mansion. The room was larger than her entire apartment. A fireplace, a balcony, a king-sized bed, fresh flowers, expensive furniture. Everything looked perfect. Yet she had never felt less safe. A gentle knock came at the door. An elderly butler entered carrying a tray. My name is William. I've worked for the Russo family for 34 years. He placed dinner on the table. You should eat. Emma looked at the untouched food. I'm not hungry. William smiled kindly. No one is after the first day. Before leaving, he quietly added, Mr. Russo has not eaten either. Emma looked surprised. Why? He rarely eats when people under his protection are frightened. The old butler quietly closed the door behind him. Emma stared at the meal. For someone everyone called ruthless, Adrian's actions didn't match his reputation. Across the mansion, Adrian stood alone in his private study. Marco entered carrying another folder. The fire wasn't random. Adrian looked up. I assumed as much. Marco handed him several security photographs. The fire started in Emma's apartment. Only hers. The rest of the building suffered secondary damage. Adrian's eyes narrowed. They were searching. Marco nodded. Our investigators believe someone entered before setting the fire. They were looking for documents. Adrian remained silent. What about Daniel Voss? Marco sighed. Still missing. And Robert Carter? No trace. Adrian walked toward the window. Something wasn't adding up. Robert Carter disappeared. Daniel disappeared. Emma was attacked. Someone stole his ledger. Every road somehow connected to the Carter family. Yet Emma clearly knew nothing. That meant someone else did. The next morning, Emma wandered through the mansion gardens. She needed fresh air. The estate was peaceful. Beautiful flowers covered the stone pathways. Birds sang near a large fountain. It almost made her forget armed guards stood every 50 feet. She stopped beside a marble bench. You couldn't sleep either? Adrian's voice came from behind her. She turned. He wore simple black trousers and a white shirt instead of his usual suit. For the first time, he looked less like a mafia boss, and more like an ordinary man. Not really. He nodded. I figured. Emma crossed her arms. Can I ask you something? You already are. She almost smiled. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Adrian looked toward the fountain. When I was 16, my mother was murdered. Emma remained silent. The people responsible weren't after her. They wanted my father. They couldn't reach him. So they killed the person he loved. Emma slowly understood. You think they're doing the same thing now? I think someone couldn't reach your father. So they came after you. The conversation was interrupted by Marco running across the garden. Boss, we've got something. Adrian immediately became serious. What? Marco handed him a tablet. Security footage. A man wearing a baseball cap entered Emma's apartment building less than 30 minutes before the fire. He wasn't carrying gasoline. He was carrying a briefcase. Emma leaned closer. Zoom in. Marco enlarged the image. The man briefly looked toward the hallway camera. Emma gasped. I know him. Adrian looked at her. Who is he? He worked with my father. He handled company finances. What was his name? Michael Reeves. Marco immediately contacted the security team. Find him. Adrian stopped him.
No.
Marco looked confused. We don't chase him. We let him believe Emma is still vulnerable. You want him to come here? Adrian nodded. He'll lead us to Robert. Emma stared at Adrian. You planned this. I adapted. She shook her head. You think 5 moves ahead. It's how I've stayed alive. That afternoon, Emma entered the mansion library. Hundreds of books lined the walls. She wasn't expecting Adrian to be there. He stood reading an old journal. You actually read? He raised an eyebrow. Were you expecting weapons manuals? She smiled for the first time. Honestly, yes. I was. Adrian laughed quietly. The sound surprised both of them. Emma noticed it immediately. You don't laugh very often.
No.
You should. It suits you. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt comfortable.
That
A loud alarm echoed throughout the mansion. Every guard immediately reached for their radios. Marco's voice thundered through the security system. Intruder. North entrance. Everyone move. Emma instinctively stepped backward. Adrian grabbed her hand. Stay behind me. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. 3 armed men forced their way inside the library. One of them pointed directly at Emma. There she is. The leader smiled coldly. Forget the documents. The girl is worth far more. Adrian slowly stepped in front of Emma. His eyes became ice cold. You made one mistake. The gunman laughed. And what's that? Adrian's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. You walked into my house. Before anyone could react, the mansion lights suddenly went dark. And somewhere inside the darkness, the first gunshot echoed. The first gunshot echoed through the dark mansion. Emma instinctively covered her ears as every light inside Russo Manor went out. Only the emergency lights slowly flickered on, casting a deep red glow across the library. Marco's voice burst through the security radios. Boss. Multiple armed intruders inside the East Wing. Adrian calmly stepped in front of Emma. His broad shoulders completely shielded her from the 3 armed men standing across the room. The leader smiled. So, the famous Adrian Russo. I expected someone taller. Adrian didn't even react. Instead, he quietly whispered to Emma, no matter what happens, stay behind me. She grabbed his sleeve. They have guns. So, do my people. The gunman laughed. We're not here to kill you. He pointed directly at Emma. We're taking the girl. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Me? The man nodded. She's worth much more than the debt. Adrian's eyes turned ice cold. You'll leave with nothing. Without another word, the gunman fired. The bullet struck a marble pillar only inches from Adrian. At the same moment, Marco and the mansion security team stormed into the library from both sides. Gunfire exploded throughout the room. The attackers quickly realized they were trapped. 2 surrendered immediately. The 3rd escaped through a broken window into the garden. Marco looked toward Adrian. I'll get him. Adrian nodded once.
alive.
Outside, rain poured across the mansion grounds. Security guards chased the fleeing attacker through the gardens. Only 5 minutes later, Marco returned with the wounded man in handcuffs. They forced him into Adrian's office. The man refused to speak. Adrian calmly sat across from him. Who sent you? Silence. The attacker smirked. I'm not afraid of you. Adrian smiled slightly. You should be afraid of the person who hired you. The man frowned. What? They sent you here knowing you wouldn't survive. The attacker's confidence slowly disappeared. Adrian leaned forward. They already planned to eliminate you. You know too much. The room remained silent. Finally, the attacker lowered his head. It was Victor. Emma looked shocked. Victor? He said the girl had a key. Adrian narrowed his eyes. What key? We don't know. He only said Robert Carter hid something before disappearing. Emma suddenly remembered something. My father. He always carried an old silver pocket watch. Adrian looked toward her. A watch. She nodded. He never took it off. When I asked why, he said, some things are worth more than money. Marco immediately understood. The ledger. Adrian slowly stood.
No.
The key to finding it. Several hours later, Emma sat quietly inside the mansion library holding an old family photo. Adrian walked in carrying a small wooden box. We found this. He placed it on the table. It was hidden inside your father's office. Emma carefully opened it. Inside rested the silver pocket watch. Her hands trembled. It really was here. She pressed the small release button. Nothing happened. Adrian examined it closely. This isn't a normal watch. He gently twisted the crown. A hidden compartment quietly opened.
Inside,
A tiny memory card. Marco immediately inserted it into his laptop. Dozens of financial records appeared on screen. Secret bank accounts, bribery payments, illegal transfers. Every transaction connected directly to Victor Russo. Emma looked stunned. My father copied everything. Adrian nodded. He wasn't stealing from me. He was collecting evidence. Marco smiled. Robert Carter was trying to expose Victor. Everything finally made sense. Victor had borrowed money in Robert's name, used the construction company to move illegal funds, then kidnapped Robert after discovering he had copied the evidence. Emma whispered, So my father never owed you anything? Adrian looked at her.
no.
The debt was manufactured. She stared at him. You knew. I suspected, but I couldn't prove it. Marco's phone suddenly rang. He answered immediately. After only a few seconds, he smiled. We found Robert. Emma jumped to her feet. My father?
He's alive.
The following morning, Robert Carter arrived safely at Russo Manor. Emma ran across the front courtyard without stopping.
Dad.
Robert hugged his daughter tightly. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you involved. Emma cried against his shoulder. I thought I'd lost you. Adrian quietly watched from the mansion steps. Robert slowly walked toward him. I judged you wrongly. Adrian shook his head. You protected your daughter. I would have done the same. Robert smiled gratefully. You already did. 3 weeks later, every piece of evidence had been handed over to federal investigators. Victor Russo and everyone working with him were arrested. The false debts were erased. Robert's company was cleared of every accusation. For the first time in years, Emma's family was finally free. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about Adrian. She walked into the mansion garden one quiet evening. He stood beside the fountain watching the sunset. You could have forced me to stay, she said softly. The paperwork gave you that right. Adrian smiled. I never wanted ownership. I wanted the truth. Emma stepped closer. And now? He looked directly into her eyes. Now I want a choice. She smiled. What kind of choice? He reached into his jacket, then held out a small velvet box. I bought your father's debt. He laughed quietly, but somewhere along the way, I lost my heart instead. Emma laughed through happy tears. That line was terrible. I know. I've been rehearsing. She shook her head. You should never write romantic speeches. So, is that a no? Emma gently took the ring from his hand. It's a yes. But only because you're better at protecting people than flirting. Both of them laughed. Marco, William, and the mansion staff quietly applauded from the terrace. Several months later, their wedding took place in the mansion garden surrounded by friends, family, and everyone who had stood beside them. As Emma placed the ring on Adrian's finger, she smiled. The first day we met, I thought you were the man who ruined my life. Adrian gently held her hand. And now? She looked into his eyes. Now I know. You were the man who saved it. Adrian kissed her forehead. Money had brought them together. A debt had introduced them. But neither money nor debt had kept them side by side. Trust had. Love had. And the courage to protect each other had turned two strangers into a family. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Adrian looked at Emma and smiled. The debt is finally paid. Emma squeezed his hand. No. The debt was never ours.
No.
The debt was manufactured. She stared at him. You knew. I suspected, but I couldn't prove it. Marco's phone suddenly rang. He answered immediately. After only a few seconds, he smiled. We found Robert. Emma jumped to her feet. My father?
He's alive.
The following morning, Robert Carter arrived safely at Russo Manor. Emma ran across the front courtyard without stopping.
Dad.
Robert hugged his daughter tightly. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you involved. Emma cried against his shoulder. I thought I'd lost you. Adrian quietly watched from the mansion steps. Robert slowly walked toward him. I judged you wrongly. Adrian shook his head. You protected your daughter. I would have done the same. Robert smiled gratefully. You already did. 3 weeks later, every piece of evidence had been handed over to federal investigators. Victor Russo and everyone working with him were arrested. The false debts were erased. Robert's company was cleared of every accusation. For the first time in years, Emma's family was finally free. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about Adrian. She walked into the mansion garden one quiet evening. He stood beside the fountain watching the sunset. You could have forced me to stay, she said softly. The paperwork gave you that right. Adrian smiled. I never wanted ownership. I wanted the truth. Emma stepped closer. And now? He looked directly into her eyes. Now I want a choice. She smiled. What kind of choice? He reached into his jacket, then held out a small velvet box. I bought your father's debt. He laughed quietly, but somewhere along the way, I lost my heart instead. Emma laughed through happy tears. That line was terrible. I know. I've been rehearsing. She shook her head. You should never write romantic speeches. So, is that a no? Emma gently took the ring from his hand. It's a yes. But only because you're better at protecting people than flirting. Both of them laughed. Marco, William, and the mansion staff quietly applauded from the terrace. Several months later, their wedding took place in the mansion garden surrounded by friends, family, and everyone who had stood beside them. As Emma placed the ring on Adrian's finger, she smiled. The first day we met, I thought you were the man who ruined my life. Adrian gently held her hand. And now, she looked into his eyes. Now I know. You were the man who saved it. Adrian kissed her forehead. Money had brought them together. A debt had introduced them. But neither money nor debt had kept them side by side. Trust had. Love had. And the courage to protect each other had turned two strangers into a family. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Adrian looked at Emma and smiled. The debt is finally paid. Emma squeezed his hand. No, the debt was never ours.